All right, everybody, welcome here inside the Den FOX5 Studios. Mike Davis, a brand new edition of Dry Heat with one of my favorite people. This guy, I mean, listen, we have a lot of talented people come into the Den for Dry Heat, but this guy, ventriloquist, comedian, singer, impressionist. He does a little bit of everything. You know him because he won the second season of America's Got Talent, and ever since then, this guy's been grinding. He's a fixture here in Las Vegas, and here at the Smith Center for the Las Vegas Philharmonic. They're closing out their 26th season. In My Own Voice, an intimate evening with Terry Fator that's going to be going down. We're going to be learning all about it. And I'm especially excited because I always think this guy doesn't even need a puppet. He doesn't need Winston the Turtle because his voice is so darn beautiful. Joining me inside the Den, the great Terry Fator. Terry, great to be back with you.
Thank you. That's quite a compliment. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I think this is what's so fascinating about you is that, and I want to get into your history and your story and all that stuff, but you really can sing. There's a lot of people who are good with the ventriloquist stuff. They can do some impressions. You can sing. When you sing like Marvin Gaye with Julius, it sounds like Marvin Gaye. When you try to sing like Bocelli and you sing the prayer, it sounds like Bocelli. So the way that you can traverse genres, it's remarkable to me, actually.
It's weird. It's really, truly is a gift. And let me tell you how this came about. So I could do impressions from the time I was 3 years old. I could hear things. I probably drove my poor parents crazy because I would mimic everything. And then when I started to really sing, when I was 7 and 8 and 9, we had Donny Osmond, we had Michael Jackson, we had Wayne Newton, and so of course I'd be on and they called it puppy love. I could do this,
right.
And then I found ventriloquism when I was 10, and so I always had this ability to mimic singers. And then when my voice changed, I was able to start mimicking the adult singers. Never really thought about doing female voices at that time, but I was doing impressions. Like I would have my puppet. We would go to church, and I would have my puppet. Well, I guess I did do female voices because at the time, the big popular Christian singers that they would play at church were Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, and David Meese and things.
Okay.
And I would get up, and my puppet would sing like Amy Grant. So I guess I forgot that
You
I
can
did
mimic.
that. I just thought of that. I just remembered that just now. So I guess I was doing female voices. But the funny thing is, so when I finally started doing impressions of singers and puppets, and we talked off the air about the fact that I was in a band for 15 years.
Right.
I was in 2 different bands.
Freedom Jam and Texas in the Band. So you would actually go up and perform without a puppet,
Yes.
without doing anything. You're just the lead
Yes.
singer of a group.
And we would do all these different impressions. So one of the reasons why our band was so popular is that I could do every style and every type of music. So we would go straight from Guns N' Roses, and then the next song would be George Strait, and then the next song would be Def Leppard, and then the next song would be Randy Travis.
But let's give
the people were just
context
kind
to
of
this.
like, "Whoa, what is
But
happening?"
let's give context because, yes, you could go to a bar and hear a cover band do something with Guns N' Roses and then do a little Randy Travis. But they're going to sound the same doing it.
Yes, they were horrible.
So you would actually sound like Axl Rose and then sound like Randy Travis.
So honestly, this is how I figured out. This is how I actually found out that I am an impressionist. I honestly had no idea. I could just hear it and mimic it. I did not know that I had a special talent. So one day, my guitar player, Rob Beard, we're of Texas the Band, we're in this bar, and we're listening to this guy, and he's singing, what was he singing? Oh, Def Leppard, and he was singing Animal, just,
Yeah.
and I won't. And I'm sitting there, and like, oh my God. I said, this guy is awful. I said, why doesn't he just sing it like Joe Elliott? And my guitar player looks at me and with this confused look and said, "You're the only person in the world I've ever met that can actually do that." And I said, "Really?" I said, "I thought they were doing that on purpose." And he goes, "No, you're the only person I know that can change your voice."
Right.
So that was when I was like, "Oh wow, I have the ability to do impressions." And so we did that for a long time. And then one day I came to see Danny Gans in here in Vegas, and he was like the biggest thing in the world. And go ahead and cough, baby. My wife has had a terrible dry cough, and you don't feel bad.
It's his Dry Heat with
it is
Mike
dry.
Davis.
It's dry heat. So anyway, I went to see Danny Gans, And I'm going, oh my gosh, he does what I do. He does. And so he did one song after another. And I thought, I do that voice. I do that voice. I do that voice. And I left the show thinking, I'm going to be a Las Vegas headliner. And I'd been a dream of mine since I had read an article about him in the 80s that he had signed a multi-million-dollar, multi-year deal in Las Vegas. And so I thought, I can do this. And so as I'm driving back, I was doing the Logandale Fair, the Nevada State Fair in Logandale, or the Clark County Fair, I mean. And so I was playing that every single night that it was going. And I'm thinking, well, there's already a Danny Gans, and I don't want people to say, oh, Terry Fator, he's Danny Gans light. I thought, well, how can I make it different? I thought, well, I'm a ventriloquist.
Right.
Why don't I just let my puppets do the impressions? Now, to me, it was just a natural, easy. We talked about the fact that when I had a janitorial business, or my parents did, and I would, when I'm cleaning toilets and vacuuming and dusting and emptying ashtrays and garbages, I would sing along to the radio with my mouth closed and practice my ventriloquism.
Right.
So for me, it was not hard for me to do. So I get up on stage for my next show. That was maybe noon on, whatever, after I'd seen Danny Gans. And I thought, I'm going to have my puppet do an impression. So my puppet, I had my puppet sing Garth Brooks. And the audience's jaws dropped. And then after I did that, this guy comes up and says, were you really singing that? And I said, yeah, that was me singing. He goes, do it. And so I said, blame it all on my roots. I showed up in boots. And then if you're listening and you can't see this, I just did that without moving my lips. And the guy went, oh my gosh. At this point, I realized I'm onto something really interesting. But I thought that there was going to be copycats popping up all over. So I was calling myself the human jukebox because I could do, like a jukebox. I could do anything, everybody from all these different voices. So I changed my slogan to the original because I'm thinking, man, once they see me on America's Got Talent, they're going to be popping up everywhere.
Right.
Well, about 3 years in, I realized nobody else had popped up to do it. And then I thought, oh, well, geez, it's because nobody else can do it. You not only do you have to have the gift of being able to do ventriloquism, you have to be able to be a comedian. You also have to be a puppeteer. You also have to be able to do impressions, and you have to be able to sing. So it's like, wow, and that's
it's
really
beyond a trifecta.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a quinfecta or something.
It's crazy.
So here's what a few things, and talk to me like I'm a golden retriever and I'm an idiot, because I'm trying to figure this out. So like Jim Carrey, if he wanted to do an impression, because he's great at impressions, or even Kevin Spacey's great at impressions, right? Mm-hmm. So they can do like a Marlon Brando impression, but they can't sing.
Right. Right.
Kevin Spacey can actually.
It's actually the opposite for me. I can't do speaking. I can do some, but I don't do speaking impressions, but I can sing.
So you couldn't do an impression of my voice?
No, but if you sang to me, I could sing it back exactly. I had this lady that was a singer. She met me one time, and she says, so you can do impressions of singers? And I said, I do. And so she sang a line, and I sang it back to her exactly the way she did it. And she went, oh my gosh, that was unbelievable. But I don't know what it is, but I can hear the tones, and I can recreate the tones. But I can't, I guess I probably could do impressions. I can do Eric Cartman. Oh, that's great. Nice to meet you.
Right.
But I can only do, I don't do many, but I can sing like just about anybody. It's very strange.
Okay, so let's go back to your earliest memory. It's at the age of 3.
3.
You're at church.
Mm-hmm.
I believe you're standing on a dining room table or something.
Our church used to have dinners after everything, and so it was kind of like almost like a little commune. And we were always doing things. My first school was there, my preschool, and then my first 5 years old. We all went. Everything was revolved around the church. So we were having dinner one night, and oddly, I don't know why, but this really imprinted on my brain. And I loved to sing. I had this little record player that was a 45, and I had all these records, and I was doing, I could hear, Beatles songs and Carole King and all this stuff. And so I'm listening to all this stuff, and I can sing them. So one day, I don't remember why, but I was standing on this table, and I see this in my mind. I can see this like sea of adults, and I started singing, and they were laughing and clapping and smiling. And in my little 3-year-old brain, I thought, this is what I want to do. I like this. This is where I belong. And, my wife Angie says that I'm more comfortable on stage than I am anywhere else. It's really where my happy place is.
I think most true talents are like that, and that's how they feel. So then pushing ahead 5 years. So your parents have this janitorial business. You're alluding to that. 8 years old, your parents would drop you, your brother, your sister off at just a huge building.
Yeah.
And you guys would have to do the work and clean. So instead of trying to find some enjoyment in the boredom of cleaning, you would actually listen to the radio or sing and start developing these voices. So it's kind of like Outliers, the great Malcolm Gladwell book that I love, the 10,000 Hours, the Beatles, that song 8 Days a Week is all about, they were in Hamburg and they're grinding and they're playing so many shows that's how they could crank out those hits, and that's how they got so good. You're developing your 10,000 hours as an 8-year-old doing voices while you're mopping like a floor.
Exactly.
So could you give us a taste of what you would be doing? You don't have to bring out a mop, but just, give us an example of what you would do in your head to pass the time.
So I would be doing something, not that there's anything wrong with being a janitor. It just was not my calling, and I hate physical labor.
Jim Carrey had the same thing, actually, if you don't know. In Canada, his parents, same issue.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, that's fascinating. So he probably did the same thing I did. I lived vicariously through my imagination of what I was going to do when I didn't have to be a janitor. My brother loves physical labor. He would go to the ranch and he would be digging post holes in 110-degree weather in Texas, and he lived for that. I hated it. I wanted to do mind work. I wanted to write. I was the guy that was writing poetry and songs and routines and jokes and singing and practicing. I wanted to be on stage. That was my dream. So instead of allowing this what could have been hell for me as a child who didn't want to be doing this, I didn't want to be vacuuming at 8 and 9 and 10 years old. I decided I'm going to focus on what I want to be and what I want to do. So when I found ventriloquism at 10 years old, I would listen to the radio. Now this was I just did a little bit of so let's say so I was listening and Donkashane would come on.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there and I'm mopping and I'm like, Donkashane, darling, Donkashane.
So you're singing Wayne Newton.
Doing all this, yes.
But why are you not moving your lips? Is it because you were embarrassed in front of your siblings to sing? Or
because I would sing with my lips moving until I found ventriloquism. And then I said, this is a perfect way for me to practice not moving my lips.
Okay, so...
so once I found ventriloquism, that's when I started singing without moving my lips.
So you get this book from Paul Winchell.
Paul Winchell. Ventriloquism for Fun and Profit.
And you're getting that around 10 years old. Educate me. Had anybody in the history of ventriloquism before you found a way to marry singing and ventriloquism? Was that ever a thing, or was it just kind of like you're talking to a puppet who's just talking with you?
I think they had done it intermittently. Like, for example, somebody told me that Sherry Lewis actually did a show with a symphony, and she didn't. It wasn't as song-centric. She would do little songs, but she would do normal routines. I think I'm the first that made my show a musical, and of course musical impressions, because I'm the only one that can do impressions, singing impressions, and ventriloquism. But no one made it a focal point of ventriloquism until me. I was just told maybe 3 or 4 years ago, somebody comes to meet me at one of my meet and greets after my show. And they said, how does it feel to be the father of the singing ventriloquist? And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, you do realize that worldwide, you're known as the guy that started the singing ventriloquist. And I said, I am? And they said, yeah, just like the guy that started doing bird magic. And I never can remember his name.
I don't know that.
But yeah, but there's like a book about this guy. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I didn't realize I was having that kind of an impact, but I literally changed the world of ventriloquism because almost every ventriloquist sings now, you notice. And it was because of what happened with me with America's Got Talent.
I think it's so remarkable, and that's why I'm so excited about this show on June 21st with the Las Vegas Philharmonic at the Smith Center. First of all, Smith Center, it's a gorgeous venue. It's going to be beautiful. In my own voice, an intimate evening with Terry Fator. So here's the thing. It's not that I don't like ventriloquism and I don't like puppets, but I just love music. So when the first time I met you, and then I think my first show I ever saw of you was a Christmas themed show at the Mirage at the Terry Fator Theater, I was so moved by how amazing of a singer you were. It was just like, I couldn't believe that. I was just like, give me a little bit more of the singing, please, because I was so moved by how amazing you are. I was just watching AGT All-Stars. one of my favorite albums of all time is Bocelli's Sogno album. It's like an Italian, just beautiful album. Celine Dion, The Prayer, David Foster written song. You sing this on AGT All-Stars. I just cannot believe the ability to mimic Bocelli, to not be moving your lips, to have to focus on singing Italian and having Winston at the same time. Can you do a little for us? Because it's just striking to me.
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Winston.
Yes.
This is Winston.
And we got a special mic just for you, Winston.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Here we go. This is Bocelli. Quando si lontana sogno l'orizzonte mancan le parole e io sì lo so che sei con me, con me, con me, con me. La luce che tu dai nel cuore resterà a ricordarci che l'eterna stella sei. There you go.
I'm melting. I'm melting. It's dry heat. I'm melting inside. It's so freaking beautiful. And it's like, so this is why I can't wait. I got to be in the first row for this, baby, because you're telling me, and I have so many psychological questions for you, but in my own voice at the Smith Center with live music on stage, there's no puppets.
There's very few puppets. I'm kind of
So you're
throwing the
gonna be
audience a
naked.
bone. Yes, I'm going to throw the audience a bone because they know me from doing puppets. And by the way, I don't want people to think I'm giving up the puppets. I love doing what I do, and the fact that I'm the only one that can do it, there's no way I'm going to stop doing shows with the puppets. But this is just a whole new avenue and something people don't realize. That you don't know how often people will come up to me after a show and they'll say, I will have done a song by myself, and they'll say, I didn't know you could sing, which means I'm doing a really good job, because if they think the puppets are really singing, then they really believed it.
Well, I just think I guess it's a mental leap for people. And I just was when you're doing David Bowie at the Christmas show, you're doing, Donny Hathaway, it's just, I cannot believe you're able to replicate those voices and sound so beautiful singing. So I can't wait to see you without this. Now, are you nervous to a degree, because it's kind of a having a little bit of a blanket, or you're, having your teddy bear there with
nervous.
you?
I'm not nervous at all, because you got to remember, I was in a band for 15 years.
No, I
so
know.
I'm used to singing. Now, I've never sung with an orchestra. So that is I'm not nervous. I'm more excited than I am anything. I just don't know. I'm glad we're going to be doing 2 full run-throughs on Friday, because I don't know what it's going to be like. I've never followed I've never followed a conductor.
Right.
So I don't know how that's going to be. I just usually work on timing.
Let's give a shout out Ryan
Ryan Shearer.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's going to be the conductor. So, but I think it's a beautiful thing, because how many things could shock you or make you nervous at this point? So for you to be today, first of all, happy birthday, 60.
Oh, thank you.
60 years old. You look beautiful.
Thank
but
you.
I think it's amazing at 60, for all the success you've had in your life, being on the biggest stages. Simon Cowell, when you're with him at Oprah, says you're one of the top 2 most talented entertainers on the planet. For you at 60 to still be pushing the limits and saying, I want to try something new. I think this is a great thing, this Smith Center.
What we have to do, we have to, what is it? There's an old saying, without a vision, the people perish. And it's because, you can shrivel up and lose yourself if you don't continue to push and to find new and creative ways to express yourself, especially if you're an artist. I'm a person like myself. I love doing ventriloquism, and I love doing impressions. And believe me, if you've not seen the show at the Strat, you have to, because if you've ever seen me before, I am doing things in the Strat I didn't even know I was capable of. In fact,
the technology, you're saying.
Well, not just the technology. I am pushing myself vocally like I've never have before. I had decided I was going to do Bohemian Rhapsody. I have a Freddie Mercury puppet.
Wow.
And I said, I'm going to do Bohemian Rhapsody. And I worked, and up to 2 weeks before I opened, I told my wife Angie, I said, I think I've made a terrible mistake. I don't know if I can do this. I could not get it. But I'm a driven person.
People are saying it's the best. You're at the top of your abilities more than ever.
Thank you. I've heard that by a lot of people, and it's because I keep pushing myself. And so when I first started, I could barely make it through the show, and now we're coming up on a year anniversary for being at the Strat, and now I'm able to sing Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, just imagine most people would never even attempt Bohemian Rhapsody, much less do it with their mouth closed.
I mean, right. And
it's ridiculous.
Freddie Mercury's the hardest.
Yeah, he is.
Why is he the hardest out of everybody?
Yeah, he's just got such an iconic, unbelievable voice. And most people wouldn't even begin to attempt to try him. But, again, I just look and say, I don't ever take no for an answer. I mean, part of that is, you mentioned Simon Cowell calling me one of the top 2 entertainers in the world. And that was a surreal experience, but it was much more cathartic than you realize, because my father never, ever told me he was proud of me.
Really?
Never told me that I was good. In fact, he told me just the opposite. He said I was faking it, and that eventually people would realize I wasn't as talented as I thought I was. And as a result of that, I would drive myself, because I'm like, I'm going to prove you wrong. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Well, he passed away before he ever was able to say that he was proud of me. But when Simon Cowell, one of the toughest critics in the world, called me one of the top 2 entertainers in the world, it was weird. It was almost like a 10-ton weight was lifted off of my soul.
That's so sad.
I just felt like I had never really accomplished. There's an interesting thing. If you look, Kathy Bates has this amazing moment where when she was doing an interview, and she almost started to cry, because she said, I feel really bad because I forgot to thank my mother.
Oh, I remember.
Yes. And then the interviewer said, no, you did. And she said, no, I didn't. And she said, you did. We have a clip. And she plays the clip, and Kathy begins to cry because, well, her mother did the same thing to her that my father did to me.
Yeah, when she won the Oscar for Misery, is a similar thing. So what is that? It's a narcissist parent who's what is? I mean, jealous of you?
It is. Most parents, I think most parents would be like, wow, if my child can do better than me, it's a good thing. It's a fulfilling thing. My father was the exact opposite. He felt like if I succeeded more than him, he was more of a failure, and therefore he did everything he could. I was just talking to my brother a couple of weeks ago. He did the same thing to my brother. My brother was an amazing athlete, and my dad just convinced him he was a nothing. And we talked about that, and we said, what was that? Why did he do that? And I think it was just, I forgive my dad, and I love my dad, and I have no bitterness toward him. But I realized there was obvious damage to him, and I don't know. He had a very tough childhood, even worse than my own. And there was a lot of abuse in my childhood, but there was 10 times more abuse in my dad's childhood. So, he would like hit you guys? Oh yeah. He beat us.
Really?
He beat us senseless. Yeah, constantly. And he would break into our rooms at night, in the middle of the night, wake us up at 2 a.m. and start screaming. He would scream at us for 2 hours, and then he would beat us. And it was just horrifying. I mean, I had a lot of PTSD. I had to do a lot of years of therapy to help me, because I would get these night panics because of what he did. My poor wife has had to deal with some of that with me. I grind.
It's terrifying.
I break teeth grinding, so I have to wear 2 mouth braces. But it was such a cathartic experience when you have somebody like Simon Cowell say you're one of the top 2 most talented people I've ever come across. It's like, okay, well, my dad was wrong.
But it's just a sad thing, and I appreciate you sharing that, because Simon Cowell's not your father, and it's a shame that you need him to be represent a father figure.
And I didn't even know
for that weight. I know.
Yeah,
and it's
I didn't know I needed it.
But do you think so? Let me ask you this, because so many times when I'm having these conversations, and I appreciate your candor, to me it's like, do you think it's a necessary evil to propel you to the level that you got to? Because is that just part of the journey? I think so many times I see this silver lining or this through line with so many of my guests. It's like, think about it. You're one of the most, literally, I've interviewed a lot of people. I would say you're easily top 5 most talented people I've ever met in my entire life at anything from sport, traversing all, careers. But even given that, I would say the reason why you're successful, the reason why you've been able, from the Mirage to Jubilee Theater to Strat now, from New York, all these different places, AGT, the reason why you're successful is not even because of your talent, which is ridiculous to say, actually. But I would say it, and I would stand by it, and I'd say it's because of those hours you spent. Those hours of you practicing and crafting and working, and that drive. And your drive is more important than your talent. No, so and it's so crazy because everybody would say, wait, there's like probably 7 people on earth who could do this, you know? And, you know, but it's the drive.
You're right. And it's interesting because there are a lot of very talented people that don't understand why they never make it. And what you have to do is, but you also have to have a certain, it has to be built into you. I'm not sure.
But don't you think it's built into you with that trauma?
I think it is. I think it is. And a lot of it, honestly, I was a very rebellious kid. I was an incredibly good kid. I mean, we're not talking, okay, let's just put it this way. I didn't do drugs. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't swear. I didn't look at dirty magazines. I got beaten because I had a Spider-Man comic book hidden under my mattress. Not a Playboy, a Spider-Man comic book, okay? So
no, he was a nutshell.
I was rebellious in that, don't tell me I can't do something. And I don't mean like you can't do drugs. I mean, this example. So I had started Texas the Band, and we were working at a country bar there in Corsicana, Texas. And I had this cowboy puppet, Walter T. Airedale, who's still in my show, by the way. And I told my dad one time, I said, you know, I'm going to have Walter yodel. And my dad looks at me and says, you can't learn to yodel. If you can't yodel, you can't do it, so just don't even worry about it. And I went, oh, screw you. So I went to the library and I checked out a Roy Rogers record, and I put it on tape, and I listened to it for a year, and I practiced every day. And then a year later, my dad comes to the show, and my puppet's like, and my dad never said a word. And I thought, see, don't tell me I can't yodel. Don't tell me I can't learn how to yodel. I can do. And so part of it, I don't give him credit. I say it in spite of it. But when he would say, you're not going to be successful, you can never make anything as a ventriloquist, every part of me would say, you know what? Don't tell me what I can and can't do.
Right.
Especially when it comes to my talent or my gifts or my work ethic, because, you know, but you got to have a work ethic, and a lot of people just don't have it. You know,
I know 100%. You got to be able to listen. Everybody remembers you for the success being on stage with, you know, where Hasselhoff and all these, you know, judges are judging you and all this stuff. But the truth is, there's shows where you were performing at a theater of a venue that was set for 1,000 people. There's one person.
One person, yeah.
You know, like I've read this about. So it's not just the destination. It's about trying, how are you going to overcome those moments? How are you going to overcome that stuff? You had something way harder to overcome your entire life. But if I can play, you know, couch psychiatrist for a second, don't you think it's pretty simple stuff that it was a form of kind of, I don't know what, you know, the technical therapy term would be, but all those impressions and voices, it was a way for you to escape your own reality.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. The creation of characters, being able to have conversations with my little puppets, my little friends. I didn't have a lot of friends because we were very strange, a strange family. My dad was over-the-top, nutty religious, like Bible-thumping, you know. So we were very weird, and I didn't have a lot of friends, but my puppets were my friends, and I was able to. And I had this dream that, you know, of course, girls didn't like me because I was a ventriloquist. And so, but I had this thought in my head, you know, one day those girls are going to be wishing they had gone out with me, you know, when I get famous. Of course, you know, by the time I got famous, I didn't care anymore because I was.
No, I still 40s. Have that too, believe me, and I'm not anywhere near you.
I think most of us get into this stuff because we think, you just wait.
But do you still have, so a couple clarifying things. So when you're 3 and you're actually on this dining table at church, your dad loves church. He loves, you know, the community of religion. You're a 3-year-old on a dining table. You describe it as a sea of people in front of you. Your dad's just in the corner like this. Like, I mean, he's not even like thinking, I have a 3-year-old who's like a gift from heaven.
Well, I don't remember my father in that. However, he did utilize me, because here's another thing I would do.
Yeah, he made you clean buildings.
He did. But I mean my talent. So
Oh.
here's some other things though. So I grew up, and my dad had these comedy records. Jose Jimenez, do you remember that?
Yeah.
My name Jose Jimenez, a teenage.
They made a couple like remake movies of him.
Yeah. So they had Jose Jimenez, Bill Cosby. They had these, and I would listen to those over and over, and I memorized them. So when my parents would be having a party, yeah, Terry, get in here, do your routine, and I would get in there and I would do an entire Jose Jimenez routine. And then when I became a ventriloquist, I would be the straight man, and my puppet would talk in the Spanish accent and be Jose Jimenez, and I would do the. So he did like that aspect, and then he wanted me to be a preacher, and so I tried. I wanted to, because
wanted his
like most of us, I
acceptance.
wanted to get my
His
dad's
approval,
approval.
yeah.
I wanted it, so I tried and tried, but I never felt the calling from God to preach. But I tried, and I wanted him to be proud of me. I used to go door to door knocking on people's doors to tell them about Jesus,
It's amazing.
because I knew my dad would be proud of me. I went to downtown Dallas when I was 8 with a big giant King James Bible, and I stood on the corner and preached because I thought my dad would be proud of me.
I
for doing
love
that.
how sensitive of a human being you are, and that you remember all these things. You're 60 years old today, and it's such a beautiful thing to remember all that. Your mother, did she ever protect you guys or ever say anything like, hey, I'm sorry your dad's like this?
Not really. She was, but I feel like she was kind of abused as well. My dad was just was a very, very tough human being. He was abusive to all of us. And my mom, unfortunately, my mom was more in it for herself. She encouraged me, but it was not about because she loved me. It was about what she was going to get,
Right.
from it. And so there was not a lot of love, and that's what I'll be doing a song that I wrote for as my wedding vows for my wife Angie, and there's a line in it that says, but you saw through the pain, and just the same you told me I'm enough.
Yeah.
And I found the first time in my life that I found absolute, real, unconditional, genuine love was when I met my wife Angie 10 years ago. We're 10 years now. And, I'd been married twice before, and I was married to 2 narcissists that did not care about me.
But what happens is, in my own therapy, and I've gone through myself being in a relationship with someone kind of like that, a lot from what I've heard in therapy is that a lot of times you seek out somebody similar to your father.
It is interesting.
In a way to
and you have no idea. They were
unconscious.
Both
yes.
of my ex-wives were almost identical.
Yeah.
I was a cowed little boy
Yeah.
who couldn't stand up for myself.
Right.
And I ended up marrying 2 women that were domineering and had me basically, in a fetal position,
Right.
saying whatever, and I had to grow.
But you get the trauma abuse, and you get accustomed to living and surviving in that regulation.
Yes.
It's awful.
I began to wake up. It was an interesting moment. I think most of us know that Penn Jillette is an atheist, a big, very,
Yes.
I call him an evangelical atheist. When you're trying to push your
Right.
atheism on everybody else.
Yeah. It's almost becomes a religion.
So this was a wake up moment for me, because I was so terrified to confront anyone or anything because of the way I had been beat. Literally beat. My dad used to say, "I'm going to break you children like a bad horse." He would say this, and he would beat us. He would break paddles and break boards on us because he was spanking us so hard, beating us so hard. Well, we were there, and I met Penn Jillette, and I was a big fan of his, and he looks at me and he goes, "You're not one of those Christians, are you?" And I said, No, I'm not, and I am. And afterwards I thought, what did I do? I just denied my faith because I was afraid of him. And it really was interesting. I kind of started thinking, okay, where am I, and what is going on? Why am I afraid to say, actually, yes, I am, and I'm very proud of that. And so that was almost one of those defining moments where I began to heal. And of course, getting into therapy and learning to have, that's why I called this In My Own Voice, because for decades, I didn't have my own voice. It was always what the bullies and what the wives and the fathers
double
and everybody
meaning.
else. This is In My Own Voice. This show I wrote this entire show. This is all from my heart. All of these songs are part of my journey, my life. I chose every single song meticulously based. We're opening the show with a song called Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka.
Of course. Josh Groban does a good version.
Because the last line of Willy Wonka is, you know what happened to the little boy who got everything he always wanted? He lived happily ever after. And I said, that's what my life wants. I want my life to be. And believe me, it's not America's Got Talent that did that. It's the fact that I've finally grown into the human being that I know I should be.
Yeah.
And I have a wife that not only loves me unconditionally, but supports me. And I feel loved and accepted, and by not only my wife, but God and myself.
Yeah.
And so this is a monumental moment for me. Hey, it took me 60 years to get
It's
here,
actually
but,
not that
never too
old
late, right?
for that to I mean, honestly, that's that's youthful to me to achieve that and get to that point, because you should be very proud of yourself. You could, listen, it would be a complete life without you getting to that point emotionally, right?
True.
But they're two different parallels in your life. So you achieve so much professionally, but for you to overcome all that stuff emotionally and personally for yourself is a beautiful thing. And I think at 60 to get there, it's actually not, I don't think that's so old. I think, it takes people a lifetime, I think, to achieve that.
True.
And it's a beautiful thing. And I love the double meaning of this show. I think, honestly, there's a lot of, I have strong feelings about entertainers and things here in Vegas. There's a lot of shows here that I do not think are appointment viewing. I really don't. This show is going to be appointment. This is, I think, what this means to you personally, the context, the way that this is going to really play out at a beautiful venue like the Smith Center with a live orchestra. This is going to be a special evening. June 21st, Saturday, In My Own Voice, an intimate evening with Terry Fator. So let me understand a few things, because AGT, you win the second season of that. I was reading something. The guy who was the first ventriloquist on the show, he got like an appearance on Letterman. Mm-hmm. And you felt like that, if I could just even get, do a couple shows on AGT, not even win, but just get to Letterman, maybe I can make something happen with this. You end up winning. Then when you even get to Vegas, there's that whole construct of, okay, you win AGT, then you come to Vegas and there's a big deal. But from what I was doing through my own research, it seems like it wasn't just the swiftest thing of all time. After you win AGT,
No.
It's not like you're just like, okay, there you go. You signed the 5-year, $100 million deal, right?
Well, it was kind of a process. Obviously, 20 years of working, 15 years in the band, 5 years as a solo ventriloquist, tens of thousands of shows, hundreds of thousands of hours, rehearsal, practice, getting ready. And so I go on AGT, and in 1983, I was in college. And we were at a Christian college, Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, and we weren't allowed to have a TV set. So what did I do, Mr. Rebellious? I went to a flea market and I bought a little black and white TV set, and I hid it in the rafters of my dorm. And every night after lights out, I would pull that TV down and I would watch David Letterman, and I would sit there and I would watch it. I loved it, and I said, I vow to myself, I am going to make an appearance on David Letterman one day. I'm going to be on that show. I'm telling myself as a college student.
Oh my Lord.
So fast forward 2007, and I win America's Got Talent, and I immediately, the day after I won, I got a call from Jay Leno, and he said, and David Letterman, and my publicist said, here's the deal. You have to choose one,
right? Because
they are, unless you're Tom Cruise,
they don't like it.
Yeah, unless you're Tom Cruise, either one or the other. So Jay Leno had a bigger audience than Letterman, but I said, her name was Cheryl. I said, Cheryl, I vowed to myself I would do David Letterman when I was 18. I have to take Letterman. I have to, and so because I turned Leno down, I was never on the Leno show, ever.
Yeah.
And he would not. But I was on Letterman 3 times.
But I do think not everything is about the size of audience.
No.
Letterman had a more of a niche following where
He
people,
did.
like, if you went on Letterman, it meant something. Whereas Leno, it didn't mean anything.
But it wasn't even about
So
it was
Tonight
about
Show, but
fulfilling a vow.
No, I get that.
Saying
But-
I'm going to be, and I cannot tell you how that felt when I walked out there and there's Paul Schaefer and there's Letterman. And Letterman, all 3 times I appeared on his show, He came up afterwards, put his arm around me and said, "You are amazing." And one time he said, "My mother adores you. She just adores you."
I loved his
And
mom
said,
on the show.
I said, "Thank you." And I was told later that he did not do that for people.
No, he
did not.
He wasn't
come up-
fake.
No, he did not come up. And they said if he did that all 3 times, so I have no regrets. But here's the thing: so I was supposed to be on the Tuesday following my win. But I got a blood infection and ended up in the hospital. I almost died.
Oh my God.
And so I'm in the hospital and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I can't. So he tried 7 times to book me and I could not, because after this everything exploded.
Right.
And I'm flying to Hawaii and I'm flying here and I'm doing Oprah and it's like, and so on the 7th try, we finally had my publicist says, "You're not going to believe this. You're open, and David Letterman wants you." And I said, "Do it." So he actually, if you can find it, he says, this guy is so popular. We have tried so hard, and he hasn't been able to, but we finally got him. And I'm like, yes.
He's the best, and he's one of my 2 heroes growing up. The reason
me
what I
too.
do is
Obviously.
him and Howard Stern were my 2 guys that I always loved, and his show on Netflix is amazing. But for him to really say that does mean a lot. It's kind of like how comedians, when they got the call over the wave from Carson on the Tonight Show.
I heard about that.
Yeah,
Yes,
like if
yes.
they performed and did a set, but he didn't call you over, you didn't get the stamp of approval.
Right.
You know, which is kind of a fascinating thing in itself. But all right, so many beautiful things, but I just want to understand more about the residency kind of thing. So you get the AGT, and then what kind of happens? Because it's not like there's just, okay, now the road is paved and you're ready to go and it's easy breezy. Like, you got to still make things happen for yourself. So
I wanted to be a Vegas headliner from about 1988 when I read this article about Danny Gans signing a multi-million-dollar, multi-year deal. So I'm thinking, that's where I want to be. Same thing. 10 years old, I want to be a famous ventriloquist. I want to be the best ventriloquist in the world, number 1. Number 2, I want to be very famous. I want to be one of the most famous ventriloquists in the world. So those are my 2 goals at 10. Never deviated from that. I had 15 years of my band. 15 years in, I said, "Guys, I got my dream. I got to complete this dream." Now, had I stayed with the band, I never would have gone on America's Got Talent. So I said, "No, I have to do this." So when I'm on the show, I don't expect to win it. I expect I'm going to get on 2 episodes. I don't care. I can double my price at elementary schools. That's fine. You know, that was my goal. You know, I never planned on being a millionaire. And so I'm thinking, how can I let them know I want to play Vegas, that I want to be a headliner in Las Vegas? So fortuitously, one night after I did a performance, Jerry Springer, who was the host, he says, "Terry, what do you hope to accomplish with your appearance on this show?" And I'm sitting there and my brain just goes, ding, here it is. And I said, "I want to be a headliner in Las Vegas." Now, here's what happened. I didn't know this. But talk about, I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I believe very strongly in God. And if the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, it was all coming together because unbeknownst to me, that very night, some of the top executives at the Mirage who were planning on replacing Danny Gans saw me say that, and they said, "If this guy wins, we're going to offer him a contract."
Oh, my Lord.
Is that insane?
That is ridiculous.
And I said this. Now, but it goes further than that. So I was going to have my puppet. I told you about yodeling. I was going to have Walter yodel on the show. That was my plan for the next. I get this phone call. It's Simon Cowell.
Oh my!
He's the executive producer of the show.
Right. So at that point, it was Piers Morgan, Hasselhoff, and Sharon Osbourne.
Right.
Springer's hosting.
Right.
But he's the executive producer.
And he's behind. I didn't know
Simon
this.
Cowell.
I didn't even know until he called me. He's watching everything. He had seen all the auditions. He had seen everything I did. And in my first audition, apparently they taped it. I had done Tony Bennett. And one of my puppets sang, "I left my heart in San Francisco." And so Simon calls me and he says, "Now I understand, Terry, I should do the voice, I understand, Terry, that you're going." But he says, "You're going to yodel, but I heard you do Tony Bennett and Dean Martin, and I would really prefer if you would do Tony Bennett and Dean Martin."
It was good advice.
And I said, "Done." Simon says.
But here's the thing. 2 things. One, I do think a lot of times people are quick to dismiss what great producers can do, right? Rick Rubin, like a great music producer. It's hard to understand what, like tangibly, what a producer does. But Rick Rubin, when he's in the studio with Tom Petty for Wildflowers, these guys know, they know how to point artists in the right direction. Simon Cowell did you a major favor there.
He did.
But
he did.
The other thing is, because there is not too much star power associated with yodeling. You know?
Right.
I mean, let's just be real. So he kind of pointed you in that direction. The other thing, though, is a lot of people of your talent and magnitude would not hear that.
No.
Doesn't mean you had to say yes.
Right. And he even said that. He said, look, it's your performance. You can do what you want. And I'm like, I'm not stupid.
But for you to take the note.
Yes. Simon Cowell has just told me this. And I'm like, and it was funny because they told me I couldn't do medleys. And I said, well, Simon, they told me I can't do medleys. And he goes, you can do a medley. So I did. I left my heart in San Francisco, and that's Amore. But here's the thing. So the week before I had said, I want to be a Vegas and headliner, national television. When I get up there, the set they had created for me to do, Tony Bennett and Dean Martin, there is a Las Vegas marquee behind me that says, Las Vegas presents Terry Fator. And I'm like, holy cow. So here I am, and again, unbeknownst to me, these people at the Mirage are saying, if this guy wins, we're gonna offer him a contract. So during this time, I'm calling. My reps are calling the Hilton. They had people that they knew at the Hilton, and the Hilton signed me for one night only. It sold out in 4 hours. I hadn't even won the show.
Right.
I had not even won the show. So they booked me for another show the next night. It sold out in 4 hours. They said the only other person at the Hilton that had ever sold that fast was Elvis.
Yeah.
They told me this.
That's the Westgate now.
And I'm like, holy cow, yeah, the Westgate. And so then they booked me for a year doing 3 shows a year. And during that year is when they started negotiating with the Mirage. The Mirage came and saw me, saw these incredible crowds and saying, these people going, oh my gosh. And they said, we would love for you to be our next.
And that was the 5-year, $100 million contract.
That was the big one.
Oh my Lord.
That was the one.
And just the power of, it was so many things hitting at the right time. I have never seen a mental vision board more powerful than yours.
No kidding.
I'm going to give you a list. I don't want to do it before June 21st, but I'm going to send you a list of things I want you to dream up for me personally, because it seems like everything you have.
But wait, it goes even further.
Can you get me a national talk show and just dream it, and then?
So 10 years before America's Got Talent, I used to come to Vegas twice a year, and my band, Texas the Band, would come in. Yeah. We played at Texas Gambling Hall and Hotel.
Yeah.
We played at the Excalibur, too.
Oh, okay.
And we were like the house band, and we'd play for 6 weeks. And I would drive my car to a place where I could sit and stare at Danny Gann's billboard, and I would envision myself on that billboard. 10 years I did this. 5 years into that, I started carrying a Sharpie in my pocket at all times. I never went anywhere without my Sharpie. And I said, one day people are going to want my autograph. And this Sharpie is going to be there for when that happens. And I got to tell you, both of these stories, Oprah's favorite stories. But her very favorite story was the one about the sunglasses. You know that one, right?
No.
Oh my gosh, I have a Pretty Woman moment. And that was, in fact, Oprah called it the Pretty Woman moment.
Okay, tell me this.
So I was getting ready to sign the $100 million deal at the Mirage, 5 years as their headliner, right? And we're going to do this huge press conference, and I realized all I have are Walmart clothes and cheap sunglasses. So there was a sunglass store, high-end sunglass store there at the Mirage. So I walked down to the thing, and I'm in my raggedy jeans and my T-shirt or whatever.
Yeah.
I did not dress nice. Thank goodness for my wife Angie. She's the reason I look like this. I would be wearing a Spider-Man shirt if it wasn't. So I go down and I walk in, and this lady just kind of looks up her nose at me, and just kind of gives me this like look of,
right.
What are you doing here? And I said, I'm looking for some nice sunglasses. And she goes, you do realize these are all what do they call them? Not fashion, but high end of fashion,
yeah.
And I said, yeah. And she goes, okay. And so she totally ignored me. Like I walk in and start looking. Well, this other guy comes in and he's just so nice. And he's like, what are you looking for? I said, well, I need some nice sunglasses, So he starts showing me these and everything. And, in my little brain, I'm because I'd never had anything like this before. I'm thinking, $300, that's going to be that's what these things are going to cost, So we finally decide on a pair that is, I really like. I'm like, this is a cool pair. I like this. So I'll do it. He goes, okay. And so he comes up and he rings it up, and it rings up $1,800.
Oh my Lord.
And I just about peed myself. And I but I look back at the woman, and she's kind of looking, and I pull out my credit card and I said, "I'll take those."
Right.
And it was just like, the Julia Roberts, the Pretty Woman.
Yeah.
Big mistake, huge, because obviously they work on commission. So she missed out on the commission, and he got it.
Right.
And Oprah loved that story. She had me tell it twice.
That's so funny, but it really is a defining moment because you're about to sign the $100 million deal. So
and that's when he said, because he looked at my card and he goes, "You're Terry Fator. You're our new headliner." Yeah. And all of a sudden, she's all up my butt.
Gotcha.
She's all like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet you." And I'm like, "Yeah. Well, you just missed out on this commission."
Oh my God, what a classic story! Real quickly before we wrap this up, I love you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you in here. This is what this show is really made for. So I appreciate how honest and amazing you've been. As a Vegas-centric show, I'm just curious what you've learned. I mean, the longevity. To really, because now we're reflecting back on your 60th birthday from 3 to 8 to cleaning to all these different things, but you've cemented yourself, and it's really hard to do through social media, through all these different things. You've cemented yourself as a fixture and a strip headliner from the Mirage to New York to you were at Jubilee to doing the stuff at the Hilton. Now at the Strat. What's the advice? What have you learned about just maintaining and longevity and what it takes to be able to continue to be a master and to get people that want to come?
Never stop working. Never stop. Never. It's easy to get stuck in a rut. There's a reason why I'm doing a symphony show with almost no puppets. I think I've got 3 segments where I actually have puppets, just because I know the audience is going to want to see it.
Yeah.
A lot of them may not even know that that's what I do, because this is a totally different audience.
Right. It's different demographic.
Probably not America's Got Talent viewers.
Right. It's not David Letterman's mom.
Right.
Right. It's a different kind of demo.
And so they probably will. And then I think they're going to. What I've chosen are the best of the best of the best of what I do with my impressions, and I've the most amazing puppets. I've got a David Bowie puppet, an Elton John puppet, and a Dean Martin, and
just for context, and the reason why I love this, and PR Maven, who's here in this room with Angie as well, Michael Camprio, I'm going to make sure I'm sitting next to him for this show, because here's the thing. What I love about this is kind of the context of you're kind of the big blockbuster family movie guy. And this is like your indie movie.
Yes, exactly.
That's like Tarantino or like an auteur, like a
That's very well said.
Like a P.T. Anderson says, we want to make the indie Oscar bait movie about Terry Fator. That's what this show is, because the audience, the demo that's going to the Smith Center, they want to hear, Coltrane. They want it's not that it's snobby because I'm part of that demo, but I'm just saying they really know music. They're not getting worked up because of puppets.
They'll be surprised.
And that's why
surprised. If you think I'm just about puppets, you're
I know, and that's
surprised.
That's why I think this is just such a great opportunity. So, in my own voice, an intimate evening with Terry Fator, June 21st, the Smith Center. This is Dry Heat. Terry, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. Real quickly, can we see Winston one more time before we let you go? Can you just do us a little, I want everybody to see. Do a little Marvin Gaye. Give us a little range of a few things. I love when you do Marvin. Just give us a flavor of a couple
Marvin
things.
Gaye. I'm trying to think of what do I. Oh, that's right. What's the song? Wait a minute. I've been really trying, baby.
It sounds better when his voice is warmed up.
My voice? What are you talking about? It's your voice.
Oh yeah, I got a sore throat.
You do?
Yeah, his wrist hurts.
Right. Okay. Anyway, so then. Alas, my love has come along, crying over you. Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go.
Look at that. Beautiful stuff from Etta James to Elvis to Terry Fator. You're so much more than the man of 100 voices, so much more than just a trifecta. You have so much beautiful stuff. And on your 60th birthday, I think more than anything, your personal work. What we've learned today is a beautiful thing and a lesson for many at home. So thank you for being here with us, and happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
And it's not your birthday.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, Terry.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, guys, go see In My Own Voice, Terry Fator, Intimate Evening, Smith Center, June 21st. We'll see you next time here on Dry Heat.